I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with the cattle market summary for the week ending September the 21st, where cash feeders were really carrying the load as far as trying to keep this market going in the right direction. The board lent very little help, especially through the bulk of the first part of the week. Had a little profit taking there at the end of the week that propped it back up without any big losses really for the week, but it didn't lend any support to try to keep the fat cattle moving in the right direction. Your fat cattle ended up very near steady after quite a standoff there all through the week with the packers just feeling sure it needed to be cheaper, and of course your cattle feeders seeing no reason why we couldn't keep gaining ground after we'd gained full $3 the previous week. But your box beef cutout values seem to have found some footing and have stopped their seasonal decline and a little bit quicker than what we thought they might, and under good movement, so that's encouraging there. So things going pretty well on that. Had another kind of a bearish cattle on feed report that come out on Friday, and it remains to be seen how much attention that the market and the industry is going to show to that, but it's sure not going to help. But kind of dealt with the aftermath of Hurricane Florence all through the week with a lot of flooding out east in the mid-Atlantic eastern coastline there, and then had a pretty good front that come across the southern plains. Now didn't get the rains that we were expecting here in the Texas Panhandle, but once you got just over the line into Oklahoma, they got a good rain, and in some places got way more than they needed. Had a fair amount of flooding of their own there in parts of Oklahoma, especially moving towards the eastern side. But up in the Midwest and the Corn Belt, they've got harvest in full swing, and it's just amazing to see how fast they can do that with today's equipment. But let's look at the trade that happened last week. October live cattle futures through the week. Monday down 37, Tuesday down 20, Wednesday down 12, Thursday down 65. I told you, the board was sure not going to help hold anything together. Finally on Friday up 62, but ending the week with October live cattle futures closing out the week at 113.07, down 73 cents compared to the end of the previous week. Now December was better, ended the week at 118.45, and that was actually 40 cents higher than the previous week. October feeder cattle contracts, Monday was up 30, Tuesday down $1.15, Wednesday down 15 cents, Thursday down 60 cents, Friday back up 80 cents to end the week with October feeder cattle at 158.07, down 80 cents for the week. September is lightly traded into the week at 156.95, up 47 cents. Your fat cattle trade, now through Thursday of last week, we had seen some pretty decent movement, mostly at 175 dressed in the northern plains. There was 42,200 head sold in the 5-area feeding region, which was better than we'd been doing before Friday the previous several weeks, but we still hadn't really decided what the market was on a live basis. But a lot of 175 had traded in Nebraska and Iowa. They had also sold some live sales from 110 to 111.50, which would have been very near steady. Well, Friday come out, and with the board being as weak as it had been all through the week, there was just a lot of pressure to try to make that market a pinch lower. It ended up being maybe a pinch lower. The southern plains, Kansas and Texas, just refused to trade until they got the bids back up to steady with the previous week at 111. So that was steady. We did see the northern plains on a live basis sell mostly 50 cents lower, spots $1 lower, from 110.50 early on Friday morning in the northern plains, turning to 111 as the southern plains turned to 111, and so that's kind of the way it ended. But we should see a pretty decent movement, being that we'd already had 42,000 on Thursday, and a lot of cattle were traded on Friday, but we'll find that out here early this week. Box beef cutout values, average trade for last week on choice carcasses, 204.98, down only 11 cents, and it was down pretty hard early in the week last week and then come back up. So that was the average trade for the week, so that's a good sign that we've seen some solid footing, and our seasonal trend of dipping down in September might kind of be over, and they'll start raising those box beef cutout values a little bit as we go moving forward through fall into your holiday season, and they'll start that pretty early, and they're buying for that. But select cuts, the average trade for last week, 195.33, down 231 compared to the weighted average of the previous week. So now that left a choice select spread of $9.65, starting to spread out a little bit more. And like I said, a good movement with 689 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings. Your slaughter was good last week, 657,000, one of our biggest weeks of the year, 5,000 more than the previous week, and 19,000 more than the same week a year ago. Cattle on feed report that come out on Friday. Yeah, bearish again. There's a lot of cattle on feed, been a lot of cattle on feed for a long time. I think this was 20 out of 21 reports that the cattle on feed inventory was bigger than the previous year. So we've had a lot of cattle on feed. We've been working through them, and it hasn't killed the market yet. So I don't believe it's going to. But you look at your September 1st inventories, 105.9% of the same time a year ago. That compares very close to what your average of analyst guess was at 105.5. So that wasn't a big deal, but it was the largest September 1st inventory since the series began. I tell you every month that it doesn't matter which way the cattle on feed report is, whether it's bullish or bearish or in between, something's going to be the biggest since the series began, or a new record since the series began. Don't get too excited about that. But your placements for August, your report come out at 107.3, significantly higher than the average of analyst guess, which was 104.8. A lot of lighter weight cattle on feed right now. Significant numbers, more than the same time a year ago, of those weighing under 700 pounds, as we had, especially in the Midwest, where they normally would keep those calves until late December or early the next year. They got dry and they had to move those cattle at lighter weights, and they're more apt to send those cattle, their calves, right to feed, right into the feedlot, rather than grazing them like they would if they were further out west or down in the southern plains. But marketings, fed cattle marketings were very close, actually a pinch better than what the expectations were, at 100.2% compared to 100 even, which was what the expectation was. Real-time index on Beef Market Central ended the week at 155.02. That was up $1.64 from the RTI ending the previous week. But your trends in your auctions, your cash feeder trends, were even more sharply higher than that. $3 to $7 higher in most of your bigger sales compared to the previous week, with the full extent on yearling feeders, of course. But calves were higher too. But in the southeast, your trends for the most part on calves to be shipped west was only steady to $3 higher. And it's just a little bit early yet to be getting the big numbers in of calves to get ready for wheat, because most of that wheat you can't turn in on until November 15th if it's leased wheat, and it gets too expensive to try to keep those calves around. You're going to have plenty of trouble with them too, especially when you start getting them into October and you have your big swings of hot days and cool nights, and a lot of health problems in there. But they're going to have that anyway. If they get them in another 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time, it's just more yardage, more expense, more feed, and more trouble, because those cattle do a whole lot better once you get them turned out. But let's look at some individual quotes. Late last week, St. Ange, South Dakota, they have good sales on Fridays there. 341 head of steers, weighed 987 pounds at 148. You go way back further to the east, Bloomington Livestock Exchange in Bloomington, Wisconsin sold a load of 777 pound steers at $166. And then let's look at some import cattle coming across the border at Columbus, New Mexico, through an auction ring there. 107 head of steers weighed 661 at $160. That's a look at your week's markets from a Home Depot auction office here in Canyon, Texas. We'll talk to you next week.